Welcome, Gunrunner.
First released in 1982 by historic US electronics company Emerson Radio, the Arcadia 2001 was actually an upgraded version of the advanced programmable video system, which would be more familiar to European gamers under a variety of different brands including the Interton, Radofin, Grandstand and Acetronic monikers. It uses the same Signetics 2650 CPU but with more RAM, slightly better sound and an upgraded graphics chip. Like its predecessor, it was also licensed out to different manufacturers across the world, including the likes of Bandai in Japan, Leisure Dynamics in Canada, Hanimax in France, and Toshiba in Germany. Most of these companies kept the existing Emerson design, just changing the badges and boxes, which fixed the brand compatibility problems of the APVS. A few companies did come out with some pretty unique designs of their own, however, Toshiba especially, with their cool looking Telefever console. The system wasn't massively successful and proved to be one of the first victims of the North American video game crash, but actually sports a pretty decent library of games that includes quite a large number of official arcade conversions, including titles licensed from the likes of Tecmo, Konami and Nichibatsu. Alongside these big name titles were a number of unofficial clones of popular games like Defender, Missile Command and Pac-Man, as well as some rather interesting exclusives too. And it's these that I'm going to be focusing on this video, of course. I was actually surprised just how many there were in fact. Even after I ruled out the most blatant clones, there was still more than enough games to choose from. I'm hoping that this video will open up a relatively unknown console to a new audience and get it a bit more recognition. And this video wouldn't have been possible without the amazing Amigan website, which is the go-to resource for everything Arcadia 2001 related, including box and manual scans, game lists and an emulator you can download to try the games out for yourself. I've linked this invaluable website down in the description, so please go and check it out. And on that note, it's about time I got on with things, so let's go look at those amazing Arcadia 2001 exclusives.
これがビデオゲームの最新鋭機種だ。スペースメシャン、エスケープマン、コピーバーグなどなど、君はこの新しさに遭遇したか。バンダイアルカディア。
I know I said in the intro that I was trying to avoid looking at arcade clones and wanted to focus on more original games, but I think that 3D Attack does just enough to qualify, despite bearing a rather uncanny similarity to Sega's Zaxxon. Not to mention the fact that this is officially the rarest game for the Arcadia 2001, having only been released in Italy. So yeah, we do have the same isometric viewpoint as Zaxxon, as well as the ability to raise and lower the ship, and the key objective is still shooting down enemies and avoiding obstacles. However, the way you do this is quite different, because the game doesn't actually scroll. Each fixed screen here has a specific objective, and that is to get from one end to the other without dying. This might mean shooting or avoiding enemy ships, getting through an intermittent force field, or dodging laser turrets. What is interesting is that these different screens don't seem to play in a specific order. It just seems to randomly select them, so you might die on one screen but be respawned on another. This makes the game a bit less boring I suppose, but boy is this game hard. Every movement you make has to be absolutely pixel perfect, and it seems to be pretty much impossible to shoot down the enemy ships too. 3D Attack does have some nice graphics and sound however, so it does actually make you want to try it again. Released exclusively in Japan for the Bandai version of the Arcadia 2001, this is one of several games based on the company's most famous franchises. In fact, Doraemon for the Arcadia 2001 was the very first video game to be based on the ever-popular Blue Cat, and also seemed to have been inspired by another game for the console, Route 16, which itself was a port of the semi-popular Tecmo arcade game. The game starts off with a really nice title screen, something you rarely see on the system, and then you get to choose from one of 3 difficulty levels. Then you have to move through each of the maze-like rooms, picking up cheese and avoiding mice. All these rooms are linked via a kind of world map, and after you exit each one it zooms out so you can move through a corridor to enter the next one. This actually reminded me a lot of a different coin-op, Exidy's Amazing Venture, credited as the very first game to use a kind of overworld map in fact. As well as the pink cheese, you can also pick up question marks that, if you're lucky, will grant you special abilities such as helicopter hats that allow your cute kitty to fly from one room to another without exiting or using the map. Both the graphics and sound are pretty simple in this one, but it's still a game that you can have a lot of fun with, and it presents a pretty tough challenge on its highest setting too. One look at UA's Hobo will probably draw comparisons with both Konami's Frogger and even more so Activision's Freeway, as you see this funny looking dude, the titular Hobo, trying to cross an extremely busy motorway with no less than 7 lanes of traffic. But there is actually a lot more to it than that. You see, you're trying to help old Hobo get out of town, and to do that he has to cross this highway, then scale a wall to get to the train station, and finally jump across the tops of some trains to get to his final destination. This is actually quite clever, because it means that Hobo has 3 very different levels to play through. I've covered the first one well enough, so let's talk about the wall stage now. In total you have to scale not just 1 but 5 walls, arranged like a pyramid, that are guarded by rather angry policemen for some reason. As you reach the top of each one you have to jump over the policeman in order to scale the next one. The final stage is the station itself, where you see 15 trains zooming across the screen, each on a separate rail. You have to jump from one to the other until you get to the other side, at which point Hobo does a rather amusing happy dance to celebrate. This isn't the only nice touch though, as I also love the way the paramedics turn up if you die and stretch you off. It's frustrating at first, but Hobo is actually a pretty good game. Apparently this game is based on a semi-popular Japanese anime series that I'd never even seen or heard of before discovering this game. Guessing that it's not so well known in the West, so you won't be surprised to hear that this is a Japanese exclusive aimed at the Bandai version of the Arcadia 2001. In the game you play as a girl whose name I won't try and butcher, who is trying to stop some evil king from building a UFO and escaping the penguin village. She watches as the king and his loyal servant run around said village stealing parts from cars so they can build a UFO and fly away. The only way of stopping them is to shout at them, which makes them drop the part so you can grab it and put it back. If they manage to steal enough parts to finish their ship, you get one last chance to stop them by shooting them with a cannon, but you must hit the king who is flying the UFO, because if you hit the servant they get away. As you do this, your energy runs down, so you have to watch out for your friend who turns up from time to time with a pot of tea to recharge you. Dr. Slump is a wonderfully original game that oozes with charm. Its original gameplay is accompanied by some nice graphics and most surprisingly in-game music too, which is actually pretty good. This is definitely one of the best games to be released for the Arcadia console. It's a shame that more people haven't got the chance to play it. Every system needs a good racing game. This is definitely the best one I've found for the Arcadia 2001, as unlike Monaco Grand Prix, this one can be enjoyed by a single player too. In many ways this is a pretty simple affair, with your only objective being to finish a lap in the quickest time possible, but this is made harder by hazards that will cause you to crash, which ends your challenge immediately. As well as all the usual things to crash into like trees and rocks, there are also some rather stupid spectators who try to run across the track, and hitting one of these will mean it's game over. This makes auto race a lot more challenging than you'd probably expect, especially when these guys appear in the middle of a tight turn or chicane. Get to the end and it will tell you your lap time, so you can either write it down and try and beat it in future, or challenge a friend to have a go and see if they can best it. Visually, auto race is pretty nice with vibrant colours and good scrolling too. For context, there are very few games indeed on the system that actually scroll, most are fixed screen affairs. The sound effects are also very good and probably a lot better than you'd actually expect. Overall, auto race is a fun and challenging driving game that all Arcadia owners should have in their collection. With UA's Escape, we have another Arcadia 2001 game that is often described as an arcade clone. And there are certainly more than a few similarities with Stern's Berserk here, but the gameplay has enough differences to make it worth including in my opinion. Like the more famous arcade game, You simply have to make your way through each maze-like room, shooting the enemies whilst avoiding their fire. Clear all the enemies and you get a big bonus, but you can exit the room without doing so, although unlike Berserk, it doesn't taunt you for doing this. The big change is a swirling cannon in the middle of the screen, which actually reminded me a lot of Yar's Revenge, which fires at you every 30 seconds or so. You get a warning letting you know when this will happen by listening to the noise it makes. When it fires, you have a chance to move out of the way as quickly as possible, which can be very hard if you're standing near it. Your character can shoot in all 8 directions, which is good, and you also need to stay away from the walls as well as the enemies, once again like Berserk. Another thing that is different though is the varied enemy types that all have their own unique behaviour. What is especially interesting about Escape though is there's actually a slightly cut down version of this game too, which is much closer to Berserk, called Robot Killer, but this is the much better product overall. Another game based off one of Bandai's hottest properties that is still hugely popular in the present day, Super Dimension Force Macross, is also another Japanese exclusive, as you probably guessed, but there is nothing to stop you from playing it from a flash cartridge or an emulator if you want to see what you missed out on. This one begins with a terrific intro sequence that definitely raises your expectations. Once you get into the game itself, it's not quite so impressive, although still fairly fun. The first level reminded me a lot of the classic Nichibatsu arcade game Mooncrester, as you shoot enemies coming at you from a mothership at the top of the screen. You have full movement around said screen and must be careful not to run into them or get caught by their fire. Once you have defeated enough of them, you'll see the mothership start flashing and an alarm will sound. At this point you can dock with it to enter the next level. On this stage you guide your warrior through some maze-like rooms, shooting the enemies and opening doors, which reminded me a little of Wizard of War. The final room contains a nuclear reactor that you have to detonate before making your escape back through each room before the timer runs out. It then repeats, only harder. The visuals might be very simple, but the music and sound effects here are great, and Macross definitely grows on you the more you play it. When I first saw this game listed, I initially thought that it was probably a clone of the Atari arcade game of the same name, but it turns out that Arcadia Superbug is something totally different. It's also pretty original too. In this game you play as a hungry bug looking for his next meal, and you spy some fruit growing on a farm. But as you enter the farm you become trapped, and find out that lots of other bugs have got trapped there too, and will fight you for this food. so you need to negotiate all the obstacles on the screen to grab the piece of fruit whilst avoiding or shooting the enemy bugs. Once you do so, an exit door will open. Go through this door and you'll find yourself trapped in a different part of the farm, where you do the same all over again but with a greater challenge. Although you can shoot the enemies, as I mentioned, you can only fire one shot at a time. You have to be careful not to get trapped with multiple enemies around you. The various obstacles on the playfield to slow you down. They don't actually do you any harm, thankfully, so you don't have to worry about walking into them. I loved the visuals in this game. They really made great use of the Arcadia's bright colour palette, and the sprites are nicely defined too. The sound effects are perfectly adequate, and a simple pick up and play nature of Superbug means it's a game you'll definitely come back to. Haven't really had a traditional old school space shooter yet, have we? The genre was so popular at this time you'd expect the Arcadia to have loads of them, wouldn't you? And indeed it does, with some rather excellent clones of games like Space Invaders, Phoenix and Galaxian at the forefront. But with parachuters we have a somewhat original take on the genre, though you will certainly notice many elements that have been borrowed from other games of the era. As usual, you have your ship on a horizontal axis at the bottom of the screen and the usual array of enemies attacking from above. Take these blighters out, try not to get hit and go for the high score. All pretty standard, right? Well, where parachuters changes things up a bit is the addition of kamikazes, which not only try to dive bomb you, but will also leave behind craters if they hit the ground. These craters then get in your way and restrict your movement, making your ship much easier to hit. After some time the craters do disappear and are colour coded to show how close they are to vanishing, but this takes quite a while, and as the enemies never stop coming, there really is no respite here. Parachuters has nice colourful graphics with loads of objects on screen, suitably noisy sound effects and some pretty compulsive gameplay that keeps you coming back for more. And I think it's only right that we finish this list with another big name Bandai game and possibly the most famous IP of the lot. As with all of Bandai's other titles, this one gets a lot of praise straight away for its excellent presentation, and then that good impression continues as you start the game itself. You control the RX-78 Gundam as he moves around the screen taking out all the enemy forces. As you do this, you'll also see jets and tanks zoom across the bottom of the screen too, and these can be hit for bonus points, a bit like the UFOs in Space Invaders. Then you move on to the second screen, which is fairly similar, except the enemies now approach you from either side, rather than the top of the screen, and the bonus baddies, which are now spaceships, fly anywhere across the screen. Once you do complete this level, it just repeats, only much harder. You start with 5 lives, and if you get hit once it causes a giant explosion. It's also worth noting that the Gundam can fire in all directions too, including diagonals, unlike most similar games of this type. Visually this one is pretty good, with loads of sprites flying around the screen and minimal flicker. It really excels when it comes to the audio however, as you have both sound effects and music, with the latter being particularly notable. Fans of the Gundam franchise will get a real kick out of this one.
Gaylord's 50th anniversary pocketbook has page after page of fabulous bargains. Ladies' Lee Ryder jeans just $16.88. Ladies' cardigan sweaters just $8.55. Girls' sweaters just $5.96. Gaylord's has the hot new TV video game Emerson Arcadia 2001 for under $100, just $99.94. Plus this free Alien Invader cartridge, regularly $29.95. Imagine all of this for under $100. You gotta go where the go-getters are. You gotta go to Gaylord's.
And that runs up my look at 10 amazing Emerson Arcadia 2001 exclusives. But which games impress you the most here? Rather, any games you don't think were worthy of inclusion in this countdown? And do you have some suggestions of your own that I should have included? I also love to hear the thoughts of you as my audience, so please get typing in that comments section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons and YouTube backers for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following people in particular for the much appreciated pledges: Paul Daniel, Mins, Dos Gamerman, Luke MC, Carl Olsen, Seth Robinson, Frosty, Mark Strickland, Climatorn, Trogdor the Burninator, Daniel Skronsky, Ben P. Stein, Debbie Kitson, David Maddox, Your Eyes Are Bleeding, Joe Kusara, Classic Gamer 74, Bernard Santu, Peter Grantham, Noah Mann, Josh Hartman, Martin Wiggins and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now. You can get access to host extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Lad, I thank you for watching and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.